My grandfather was born in Berlin in 1924. By the time he reached the age of 10 or 12, fewer and fewer places were open to the Jews. One of the places that a little Jewish boy could go was the Berlin Zoo. The director of the zoo said the Jews had helped to save the animals during World War I, and so he refused to close his gates to them even as the Nazis rose to power. My grandfather had a season pass, and he would walk the 25 minutes or so to school, to the zoo every day after school. His favorite place was the large predator house. He would spend hours sitting amongst the caged lions, tigers, leopards, and cheetahs. He became friendly with the zookeepers, and they started asking him to assist with their work. When the big cats were out in their outdoor habitat, he would help to sweep or hose down the indoor cages. They even invited him to drink hot cocoa with them in their break room, though this was strictly against the rules. Perhaps because of the kindness he experienced there, or because of his limited options, my grandfather had it in his head that he wanted to become a zoologist when he grew up. One day, my grandfather was helping to clean the cage of Party, one of the cheetahs. "Fritz," said one of the zookeepers, "go sit on that bench." Then they led Party up and sat the big predator down next to the boy on the bench, and they took this photo. It's my favorite photo I have of my grandfather. Well, it's my second favorite photo. I also think it says so much about my grandfather's childhood. There is joy there, but also an unspeakable danger looming. My grandfather and great-grandfather escaped Berlin in 1939, some of the last Jews to leave legally. They ended up in China, where they spent the war in the Shanghai ghetto. But that's a story for another time. After the war, he moved to San Francisco. He changed his name from Fritz to Fred. He got married. He had 2 kids. He got divorced. He became, instead of a zookeeper, the principal of a synagogue religious school. He met my grandmother, Audrey, who already had her 3 kids, and he moved to Denver. By day, he was a travel agent, but on nights and weekends, he was a beloved Jewish educator in our city, and he was my favorite person in the world. We lived maybe 10 minutes from my grandparents growing up, and I spent every Shabbat of my childhood at their house. I would spend the nights, and on Saturdays after synagogue, my grandfather, my Opie, as one calls their German grandfather, would take me to the movies. When I was 14, not much older than my grandfather when this picture was taken, I was on an airplane with my parents. My favorite part of flying in those days was the Sky Mall catalog. Do you remember Sky Mall? An entire mail-order catalog full of junk you didn't know you needed. Oh, it was the best junk. So in 1998, I'm doing my usual ritual of flipping through the catalog and falling in love with something new on every page. And then I see it. The most important thing I never knew I needed: a life-size porcelain cheetah. I excitedly show it to my parents. "We need to get this for Opie." "What are you talking about?" they say. I'd grown up hearing the story and seeing the photo. "This looks just like Party. We have to get it for him. He's going to love it." I do not know how much a life-size porcelain cheetah from the Sky Mall catalog cost, but it could not have been cheap. To this day, I have no idea how I convinced them to purchase it. It must have been a long plane ride. Fast forward to Hanukkah 1998. At this point, my grandfather looks more like this. Next one. We present him first with a blown-up picture of him and Party. He is confused until out comes the oversized box with his real present. As soon as he opens the box, he is instantly overtaken with joy. He is transformed into a giddy 12-year-old before our very eyes. He insists that we recreate the photo right there at the table before the dessert has even been cleared. This is my favorite photo of my grandfather. I have so many joyful memories of him, but this may be the happiest I ever saw him. Opie died 4 years later when I was 17 of a fatal heart attack on a trip to Germany to visit his stomping grounds. I think he knew it was his final trip. And in the days and months and years to come, I would treasure this memory of my grandfather. I would treasure all the memories of my grandfather, and they would bring me joy and comfort in his absence. It's harder for me to remember all those moments now. It's been more than 20 years he's been gone. I've spent more of my life without him than with him. The moments get harder to picture. They are more feelings than image now. Even writing this, I was saddened by how much I had to look up in family records, how many details I could no longer recall. I'm grateful for the photos I have, which seem to lock these moments in place, but there are so many moments that were never photographed, which feel ever more hazy and distant. As I get older, the memories change a little bit at a time. It's not just me, and it's not just age. A study from Northwestern University revealed that every time we recall a memory, the neural pathways used to retrieve that memory change slightly. So the next time we recall it, we are not so much thinking of the event, but our last time recalling the event. And in this way, it can change a little bit. The researchers describe it as a game of telephone where the message changes bit by bit in each repetition. This scientific discovery is a little sad. The further we get from an event, the more we recall only its echoes. But I also love this discovery. The act of memory changes us. Every time we recall an old face or we are transported because of a familiar scent, our brains are transforming. Every time I think of my Opie and one of the myriad ways he contributed to who I am, even in the act of memory, he is still changing me, still shaping me. I've been thinking about memory a lot this month. My grandmother kept the porcelain party all these years. Every time she moved houses or apartments, the Cheetah came with her. Every time I'd go to visit her in college and the years beyond, I'd have a little moment with Party before I left, reveling in the echoes of the memory of that happy day. At some point, someone, probably my father if I had to guess, put a purple leather kippah on Party. And from then on, every time I visited, there it was, as if Party had converted to Judaism in my grandfather's and my absence. Often it would slip off and I would pick it up and put it back on, a little game with an inanimate animal. When I would bring my kids to Denver in the last 6 years, they would get to see Party. We learned to pet with gentle hands. We played many a game of pin the kippah on the Cheetah. My grandmother's health has been declining. Her dementia is getting worse. She remembers less and less. And this summer it was agreed that it was time for her to move to Philadelphia to a facility where she could get better care and more attention. She's 10 minutes from my aunt now, who is taking wonderful care of her, and we're grateful to her. When my aunt and uncle asked me if there was anything I wanted from the apartment, I did not hesitate. The Cheetah, please. And so it was packed and shipped. It arrived the week before Rosh Hashanah, a holiday for memory, which is called in the tradition Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembering. Unfortunately, just like memory changes us, so does interstate shipping. There were not enough packing peanuts. Party arrived a little worse for wear. Sometimes the memory changes over time, and sometimes it arrives broken, or it never arrives at all. Memories, like minds themselves, can be lost, and we are left to pick up the pieces. I've sent Party off to be repaired, but I know he will never be the same, not really, because that's not how memory works. Memories change and fracture, tessellate and iterate. And the ones we love live on, not in those memories, but in their reverberations. And so when he comes back to me, I am prepared, knowing that party will be different, because I am different, because my grandmother is different, because the world is different. We Jews are a people of memory. Over and over, the Torah commands us to remember Yizkor. Moses says, remember the days of old, consider the years of ages past. Isaiah says, remember these things, O Jacob, for you, O Israel, are my servant. I have fashioned you, never forget me. And time and again, God insists, remember that you were slaves in Egypt. But this memory is not a photograph. This is not perfect recall as a computer can do. This is a human act of remembering. It is imperfect and incomplete. We tell the story over and over again, not to keep it from changing, but because it changes, we add to it and embellish it. And we tell the story over and over again because it changes us. It adds to us and embellishes us. We do not place the story under glass, protecting it from all outside influence. No, we tell the story. We live the story over and over again in endless cycles until the story, like a memory, is no longer even recognizable because the memory is so deep in us that we cannot distinguish between ourselves and that memory. That's what we do on Simchat Torah. We end the story, and without even a breath, we begin it again. Life is sometimes like a straight line, like a cheetah that lived in Berlin, and then in an airplane, and then in Denver, and now in Houston. But life is also full of circles, like a grandmother who lived 10 minutes from her daughter to help take care of her grandchild, and now has moved across the country to live 10 minutes from a daughter who can help take care of her. Like a boy who was born in Berlin and lived in America and died on a trip to Berlin. Like another boy who was born in America, but who went to Berlin and visited a zoo with a photo of his long-dead grandfather and found a bench and took his own picture. He sat next to a wife, a woman that grandfather never knew, but who had heard so many stories that they were like memories to her as well. And on that bench, they made a new memory that fuses with the old one and adds to it. Each generation coming home, placing the purple kippah back on the cheetah's heads. Even long after the kippah is lost and the cheetah is broken, we will still have the story, and the story will keep rewriting us in each retelling. May God bless our memories of our loved ones who have left us. Those imperfect, imprecise, unreliable memories bring us joy and pain and purpose and hope. May the moments for which there are no photographs come flooding back to us. And may we feel comforted in the fact that even the memories we can no longer recall have shaped us into the people we are today. Zichrnam livracha. May all the memories of our beloved dead continue to be a blessing. Amen.